Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. And more importantly, welcome to Depthcember. This is a yearly tradition on the channel for December to run a bunch of really fun and interesting Dark Depths decks, as well as really good and competitive ones as well, because who doesn't love our Lord and Saviour, Marit Lage? So we're beginning off Depthcember with the classic Green-Black Turbodepths. This is actually the competitive list that I've been running in tournaments lately. I recently actually played in a local tournament, and I went and topped the Swiss undefeated to lose in the top 4, so deck is pretty decent still. For those who are uninitiated, Dark Depths is a land, comes in with 10 counters. When you remove all the counters, you get a 20/20 indestructible flyer. Vampire Hexmage can strip off all the counters. Thespian stage can become a copy, but because it came in as a Thespian stage, it doesn't have the counters, so then it just becomes a 20/20. That's how we win the game. We have tutors like Sylvan Scrying and crop rotation to find our pieces. We have fast mana like Elvish, Spirit Guide, and Lotus Petal to power it out. We have various forms of disruption, so we've got some hand disruption here. We've got some Pithing Needles, which can stop Wasteland and Karakas. And we have some Not of This World to protect against removal, as well as a Karakas activation and things like that. This particular list is running 3 Once Upon a Time, which in my experience has been really useful. It changes the way you can map your sideboard slightly, and it also gives you the ability to go off, generally speaking, slightly quicker, because you're more likely to find the bits you need. So do you need fast mana? Do you need the creature to go off quicker? Do you need like a Thespian stage or an Urborg or whatever? It can do a lot of work. But an important thing to remember with Once Upon a Time is when you're evaluating your opening hand, you have to remember our deck cannot win without Dark Depths. If your opening hand does not have a way to get to Dark Depths, it's probably not worth keeping. You can't keep Once Upon a Time as a speculative, this could be a Dark Depths, because this only looks at the top 5 cards of your library, which is just not enough to guarantee a Dark Depths. But this can be basically any other piece, and you can evaluate it as that. Obviously, if you mulligan really low and you have to take a punt on this, that sometimes happens. Mana base wise, we've got a few silver bullets, so we can shoot it for a Boseiju and blow some stuff up. We've got Bojuka Bog for graveyard lines our opponents may have. We have ourselves a Sejiri Steppe, which we can use to protect our Marit Lage from removal. Ghost Quarter that can blow up Karakas or Wasteland or whatever. The reason we run Ghost Quarter is so we can Pithing Needle the Wasteland and then have the Ghost Quarter to blow up something like a Karakas. And we are a fetch land mana base, so we can play on basics at times if necessary. And we do have the Urborg here, which allows us to do the classic turn 1 discard spell, turn 2 Vampire Hexmage. Enough about the main deck. The sideboard, we've got some extra protection in the form of Sylvan Safekeeper and Not of This World. We've got a little bit more removal for things that actually make it to play rather than in the hand. So we've got the Abrupt Decay and the Boseiju. We've got ourselves a Duress to increase our overall hand disruption if we need that. And we've got a little bit of graveyard hate in these Faerie Macabre. If you notice, we're playing Once Upon a Time, so we have got things that we can find off of Once Upon a Time. So our sideboard cards are slightly more likely to be found because of the Once Upon a Time. And of course we have 3 Collector Ouphes. Normally in the build without Once Upon a Time, I would run 4 Null Rod effects. But in this particular build we can run 3 Collector Ouphe, which is something you definitely want in the meta right now. And that is the list. And this is the beginning of Depthcember, so please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of my Dark Depths content for this month. And if you want to see it a little bit early, you can become a YouTube member for £1 a month and you get access to my videos a little bit ahead of time. And that said and done, let's venture into the wonderful world of Depthcember with Turbodepths. Alright, this is our opening hand for the very first game today. So what does our hand actually do? So we could play a forest, we can crop rotate into Dark Depths when the time comes. We have the ability to do a turn 3 uncounterable 20/20. I think we will give that a go. If we draw another piece of fast mana, we can go a turn earlier. And then we play the forest with the intention of getting rid of this with a crop rotation. So we did have an option here to use the Spirit Guide, but if we draw something that lets us go off a bit quicker, we can do that. Okay, so we're probably looking at, oh, Painter here. That is interesting. Okay. I'm going to name blue. Thespian's Stage. Let's play an Urborg here. I think I will cast this Sylvan Scrying. Right, it just resolves. Interesting. If our opponent can muster another soul land and play Grindstone, they might be able to mill us out here. Or they can have a Summon Spirit Guide, but these painted decks have a lot less sort of Lotus Petal Spirit Guide type stuff. There is a Grindstone. Okay. Do you have a Summon Spirit Guide? If they try and do it in our upkeep, we can Boseiju this away. They did have the Spirit Guide. That is unfortunate for us, and we have to scoop it up there. But this is a pretty solid matchup for us, so I'm quite happy with this one out of the sideboard. So these sorts of effects aren't really what are required in this sort of matchup. What is required are some Collector Ouphes. I also like having access to the Boseiju and some number of Abrupt Decays. So in a matchup like this, we replace one of the Bayous with the Boseiju here. And we get these Abrupt Decay is in there. And we can board out our Bojuka Bog. They do use their graveyard, but not in a way that we have to care about it, really. Sometimes it can be awkward, but we're better off just having these sorts of effects. Take out a Ghost Quarter as well. We can take out one Pithing Needle. So this is a turn 3 on the play, potentially with quicker action if we can find ourselves another bit of fast mana. Interesting. Okay, we'll keep this one. So we probably lead off on the Verdant Catacombs so we can go and fetch basics in case they have brought in some Blood Moons. What you can do if they play a Blood Moon is just use that as your combo piece. So you get your Dark Depths in after they play the Blood Moon, then you just blow up their Blood Moon. We've got 6 answers for Blood Moon in our main deck and 4 things that tutor for answers to Blood Moon. We don't have any Surveil lands, so we're not going to crack this just yet. A Pithing Needle. That's certainly a-okay with me. We'll just name the Grindstone for now just to stop our opponent immediately winning. There is an argument to name the Goblin Engineer. Not all Painterlists are playing Welder right now, but they are all playing Engineer. One thing we do have to watch out for is them playing a Painter and then having Red Blast to hit our lands. So I expect we're going to see something like a Fable of the Mirror Breaker here. Sure, that's fine by me. So if we play this Urborg out, we can Thoughtseize our opponent. And then we can crop rotate this into a Dark Depths using this Spirit Guide. An Ensnaring Bridge and the Goblin Engineer. I don't really want our opponent to have an Ensnaring Bridge, so let's get rid of that one. So we don't want to see something like an Arena of Glory to give them a hasty Engineer. So discarded a Mountain and an Ancient Tomb. Do they not have another land? I will take this too. Does mean our opponent has a little bit more mana to work with, but in theory that shouldn't matter. I don't want to expose myself to some random sorcery speed removal. Our opponent is not expecting us to combo from this particular position. There's the Ancient Tomb. A Lotus Petal. There's a lot of mana they've mustered up over there. We know they've got 2 Engineers. They could play both out. A Vexing Bauble. Okay. That is a redraw. 1 mystery card in hand. Magus of the Moon. And we know the cards in our opponent's hand. We'll go and get Dark Depths. And Dark Depths taps for black mana because of the Urborg here. So we need our opponent to not have some 1 mana interaction on the top of their library off of this Vexing Bauble. I'm not sure what that could be. They could be playing a white build. There are some builds that run white with Source Plowshares, but our opponent hasn't shown us anything like that yet. So I'm not expecting it. Drew a card with a Vexing Bauble. Did you find a Source of Plowshares? Is that in your deck? It is not. Well, it might be, but they didn't find it. Alright, that felt pretty fine. Let's just do that all over again. If they show us white mana, then we have to change our sideboard plan a little bit. So we can turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Collector Ouphe. That shuts down a lot of our opponent's good plays. We can also do this off of basics. Yeah, big fan of this hand, actually. We're unlikely to get wiped out early doors here. I don't know how much removal our opponent's going to have in their deck either. So this obviously changes the selection of artifacts that we want our opponent to have access to in their graveyard. So it might change up how we're doing our Thoughtseize here, but we'll find out. There is a little bit of tension with the Collector Ouphe and the Lotus Petal here, but that's fine because we need the Lotus Petals. 2 Ensnaring Bridges, you say. Interesting. How do we want to get through these? So we're going to have to nail the Welder at some stage. We could take the Fable, but they're just going to bin off some bridges, perhaps. Okay, we'll take a bridge. We'll play this out. We'll play this on Goblin Welder. Our deck has a lot of ways of blowing up artifacts. We effectively have 10 cards that allow us to blow up artifacts, if we include our Sylvan Scryings. We're going to see probably the Fable this turn. It could be the bridge if they're feeling a bit cagey, though. I think the... Actually, no, if you play the bridge now, then we can't take it out of your hand. Seems reasonable. We're probably going to take 1 from this Welder. You didn't take 1 from the Welder. Interesting. Okay, I'm just going to deploy the Ouphe here. Just shut down what our opponent's got going on. Make him work towards having the Marit Lage. Marit Lage also makes Boseiju cost 1 mana. So it's going to be the Fable here. Our opponent's got 1 mystery card in hand. But this is going to shut off all the treasure tokens. Not that they're necessarily going to be creating that many, but they can draw a card, attack, and then do this. It's going to be a Painter. A Grindstone. Okay. A Thespian's Stage. Okay, so we play out the Thespian Stage. This gets us another Swamp, so we can cast a Hexmage next turn. Also gives us a land that we can potentially crop rotate away if we need to. A Painter's Servant. Okay, well the Grindstone keeps us in check for now. But they just need to find a Red Blast. But we just need to find a removal spell. An Abrupt Decay, you say. We'll play the Dark Depths. So we can make the Marit Lage at end step. And then we can untap and get the crop rotate for... No, we sorry, don't use crop rotate. We just cast the Abrupt Decay. What am I talking about? Alright. So we need our opponent to blank this turn. Let's give this a go. Would have liked to have seen another green source there. Blow up the bridge. The red blasters are going to cut it here. I guess they could red blast the Pithing Needle away, actually. And then they can welder in the ensnaring bridge. That would be irritating. They did have the red blast. Okay. That is awkward for us. Okay, we're going to be in this one for a few more turns, it would seem. It's going to be another Fable. It's a Goblin Engineer. That's a very, very good draw for our opponent there. And now they have this. Okay, and they got 1 mana floating. Can't do this just yet. So they're going to blow up our Collector Ouphe here. Turns back on their grindstone, doesn't it? Yeah, okay, and then they're just going to grind us out. Yep, GG's opponent. That was a selection of very good draws for our opponent. The double engineer, the double ensnare bridge hand, plus the having to hit the Pyroblast on that exact turn, and then the engineer on that exact turn after. But we can't complain. Our deck sometimes does that too to people. Let's go to round 2. This does not have access to a Dark Depths. We could find one of the once upon a time, but we can easily go to 6 here. This does have access to Dark Depths, and it does produce a Marit Lage. So this is going to be a turn 3 Marit Lage. That's okay. A little bit slower than I would like. I think I wouldn't keep this on a 7, but I'll keep it on a 6. Probably been off one of these Spirit Guides. Okay, so this Noble Heart probably represents something along the lines of Nardu. Okay, so that came back. That's not really what we wanted. So I'll play Swamp. I will Sylvan Scrying and go and get this Dark Depths. So if we draw a crop rotation, we can do a turn 2 2020. Because we can go and get the Urborg. Another Noble Hierarch. Birds of Paradise. Okay. Once Upon a Time. Not the time for the Once Upon a Time, as it turns out. So what could it find us if we cast it? If it finds us a crop rotation, that doesn't help out either. I think we're going to get Bayou here. So we could cast the Once Upon a Time, or we could go for the Hexmage. The Hexmage can shut down some other stuff. Things like Teferi that might be burdensome. Or we could just use the Once Upon a Time. This will stop our opponent from attacking us. Do we care about being attacked that much? I don't think so. Right, we're going to Once Upon a Time now because we can draw stuff that we can cast with the Elvish Spirit Guides, so it's worth doing now rather than our opponent's turn. Sure, I'll take a Hexmage, I suppose. So we have a Depths next turn, and our opponent knows it because they've seen a Hexmage and a Depths from us. But if they play Nardu into Nomads this turn, with their last 2 cards, they will win the game because they will draw 10 cards. And then on our turn, they'll draw 10 cards. And they'll already have some flying blockers. It would just be pretty bad news for us. They could Cradle into Natural Order. An awful lot of damage, isn't it? Yeah, the Natural Order here, that is lethal. 8 mana. It's just a Cradle Ouphe from hand. That's not too bad for us. Like, it's going to hit us for a bunch. It's what? 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15? That's reasonable. They could also be Green Sun's anything for an Atraxa. That's sort of in the ballpark of what they're doing here. There's your Atraxa. Okay. Windswept Teeth, Natural Order. Okay, so we need to find a discard spell because they're going to have Natural Order and kill us. They're playing the 3-colour build. I personally am not a fan of the 3-colour build. Unless they're playing something different. But I have to imagine there's a Nardu in this deck. Natural Order, Allosaurus Shepherd, Windswept Heath. Natural Order, Allosaurus Shepherd. They didn't take their instant. Just chose not to have a Chord of Calling. Okay. So the problem we have here is that our opponent can just cast a Natural Order next turn, which is obviously very bad for us. And if they draw the Cradle Ouphe, they tap this for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they just tap these 2 and they hard cast it. So we just have to hope our opponent doesn't have it in their deck, I guess. We get to soak up 20 damage, but we're going to be taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, plus their power and toughness. So just show us the Cradle Ouphes, and we can move to the next game. Big Daddy Hoofs. Okay, so we're not going through that. So what do we want in a matchup like this? So I don't hate Abrupt Decays. Inquisition of Kozilek is a weird one here because it hits their stuff apart from the Natural Order, which is like one of the few cards we actually care about. So it's kind of an odd one as to what we're doing with this. I'm not big into the Pithing Needles here. The Ghost Quarter can take them off of mana a little bit. They probably have plows out of the sideboard, so that's another thing we might need to contend with. So we've definitely got some options of things. We don't need a Bojuka Bog, so that can immediately go. I don't think we want the Ghost Quarter. Like, if we're trying to attack our opponent's mana, I think that's gone a little bit awry for us. Because we're boarding in these things, we can board out a Once Upon a Time, so it doesn't find these things that we're boarding in. And I think the other two cards are just Pithing Needles. We can put one on Nomads in core. This doesn't do anything, so we can mulligan this one. Okay, we've located where the Dark Depths are in our deck. Unfortunately, they're all in the same place, so we've got to send this one back as well. This does not make a 20/20. I think we get a 4. This doesn't make anything, so we're going to go to 3. So, we have a black source. We need to keep this, so we're keeping these two. Probably have to keep the Thespian stage here. So it means we're probably getting rid of these things. This hand does make a 20/20, provided we find one more source of mana, which is a very abundant thing in our deck. The issue we have here is it's probably going to be quite a slow one, even if we do get to make it. Sometimes you mulligan to 3, and that's Magic the Gathering. Pride Arbor, sure. A Dark Depths, you say. Let's crack this for... I think we just want a Forest here. I'm scrying. I think we're going to get an Urborg, because we already have the Dark Depths here. That fixes our colours a little bit. This means if we draw a crop rotation, we can make our creature next turn. There is the threat of Swords to Plowshares looming, unfortunately. Once Upon a Time. So this doesn't do what we need it to do right now. I guess we have to cast this. I could take the Sejiri Steppe so we can be unblockable. I'm not a massive lover of that one. I think I'll take the Hexmage here. I'll play out the Urborg. I don't think being unblockable is what I want. I'd rather have some sort of protection in our deck if we draw a crop rotation. Sorry, I don't know how much our opponent is indexed into things like crop rotation. Like, we could have more protection effects if we wanted the Sylvan Safekeepers, but I think I'm happy with just the Not of This Worlds. There is a crop rotation. Let's go the Hexmage in. We can beat a Swords to Plowshares here. Can we beat a Natural Order? That's a different question. They probably don't have any more Dryad Arbors to fetch. So we've got 20 points of toughness we can put behind. So if they were to make a big Creator Hoof now, we could block it and live, and then crack back. Block the Creator Hoof itself. What fresh monstrosity are they going to deploy this turn? Let's make our 20/20. So, worst case scenario is they have access to Consigned Memory. This does not work. The ability goes back on the stack again. So, the danger is our opponent has Endurance and Swords to Plowshares. Because this is a state-based effect trigger, so what it does is, if at any point this has no counters on, and it doesn't have the ability on the stack to make a 20/20, it will then put that ability on the stack. So if you counter it, it just goes on the stack again. Swords to Plowshares. What are we getting rid of here? Do I want to keep the Urborg, or do I want to keep the Thespian stage? We did board in the Abrupt Decays. Quite like to have an Abrupt Decay here, so I think we're going to float some mana here. I'm going to crop rotate away this Thespian stage. This is Sejiri Steppe. So the reason we want to be able to draw the Abrupt Decay here is in case they play an Endurance. I think if they had another removal spell, they would have fired it off immediately. So we are slightly punished for getting rid of that and not keeping the Thespian stage. Is there an Endurance? There is. Okay. I was a chord for 1. What is this going to be? Is this just, let's see if I put anything... Okay, it's just the Birds of Paradise. That makes a lot of sense. Under the bust you go. We're now exposed to a Creator Hoof. We can also manually remove a counter from Dark Depths. I'm not going to bother because this game should not come down to that. But if this was a highly competitive tournament, then I would obviously do that. Right, they don't have a Creator Hoof here. Because I think they just snap off immediately and win because they know we're tapped out. Well, sorry, we don't have any cards. We're not tapped out, but we're tapped out of anything we can do. 4 mana. Or maybe they do have a Natural Order. No, it feels like a Green Sun's Zenith, the amount of time it's taking to pay. Okay, so this is going to be an Endurance. They'll be able to block for a turn. And they can nip in for 2 damage with the Allosaurus Shepherd. Oh, yeah, they got a Nardu. Have you got a Nomads? Oh, they got a Cord. Yeah, so the last 2 cards in hand was their combo. However, they've got a lot of cards they can draw. But they need to draw a very specific selection of cards for this to work. Okay, so we'll cross off the things that they come off. Yep, you carry on. Toxicrene. It's an interesting one. Consigned to Memory. We don't care about that. Forest, that goes straight into play. So now they can Green Sun Zenith for another Birds if they find a Green Sun. There is another Nardu. That doesn't do anything on this board. They don't have any white sources of mana yet either. They've got Cradle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana available. So they have the Endurance now, so they can block for a turn. Unless we draw the Abrupt Decays that we brought it in. Right, so they have a Birds of Paradise, so they can play Birds and Endurance here. So we don't have another Sejiri Steppe that we can go and find. And Nomads, this doesn't matter. So how do we get through this? I don't think we can. Because if they have the Endurance in hand and play the Endurance, then that's enough. Because then they just have 2 blockers. We don't have a way of getting through 2 blockers. We have a way of getting through 1. Obviously, we'd have to draw that card as well. 7 mana. We are actually giving them the mana for the Atraxa here as well. So all their things tap for whatever colour they want here. I think we can just call it a day here. Nadu is a lot. I don't particularly like this matchup very much. Generally, white removal matchups are a little bit awkward for us, but this one has the ability to put loads and loads of creatures in the way. Like they have lots of flying blockers, they have reach blockers in Endurance, and they have Nadu itself. And what they're doing is intrinsically powerful too. I think the Nadu decks are top tier at the moment. I put them alongside like the Mystic Forge and the Reanimator deck in terms of the things you want to be doing in the format. All right, two rounds down. Let's go and do the third. Okay, so our hand does have access to Dark Depths via this crop rotation. We have some protection against various things. What would we need to make this hand come together? If you want to be faster, probably need some sort of Urborg into Hexmage, but we can certainly have that with this hand. I think I will keep this one. And we probably just fire off this Once Upon a Time straight away. We want to do this before we play land, so we have more information about what we're doing. Our opponent's mulligan to 5 cards. That might put him in the combo that is faster than us territory. Okay, so 3 spells are good. Let's try one. A Dark Depths. Okay, that is a pretty good find. I don't know if we need to Pithing Needle. We might be trying to Pithing Needle the One Ring because of the amount of cards our opponent's mulligan to, and because we have a basic in play rather than a non-basic, we can make some more appropriate decisions. Oh, okay, we're doing that. So now we're holding up Bojuka Bog. I see. That would explain why our opponent went so low on their mulligan. So we're going to name Undercity Informer, the one that has a sacrifice ability. Balustrade Spy is the other one. Undercity Informer. This is going to be a really weird game. I assume this is the deck that I suspected it was. A Balustrade Spy. No mana floating. What flavour of Oops are you going to be? Is there going to be anything spicy in there? Some Reanimate stuff. Chancellors. There are Pacts of Negation. They don't have one in hand. Okay. Well, we basically just have one play here, don't we? Sacrifice the Ghost Quarter. They've only got one Narcomoeba, which probably means they have some Narcomoebas in their hand. They must have at least one Narcomoeba in their hand at that point. To be 2. Yeah. Our opponent certainly hit their fail rate there, but we did have some interaction. They probably could have generated some more stuff there. So, Faerie Macabres are pretty handy here. Collector Ouphes aren't the worst either. We don't need to care about what our opponent's doing, because that's not how this game works. We can use Boseiju as a strip mine if we want it. Pithing Needles has some text. Duress has some text. So these are things we are potentially investing in. The Once Upon a Time finding Faerie Macabre means we're definitely keeping in the Once Upon a Times. Ghost Quarter, Bojuka Bog, these are all pretty important. Such a weird polarizing matchup. I think we probably are binning off some amount of Pithing Needles here, because our opponent's deck is such a weird one. Okay, I would have liked to Once Upon a Time here. We're cold to Chancellor. If they go off on turn 1 with Chancellor, we can't pay for the Chancellor. Actually, no, we can pay for the Chancellor. We don't need to because it's Faerie Macabre. All right, come on, brain. Let's get with it. A Lotus Petal from our opponent. This is probably going to be a Dark Ritual of some description. Balustrade Spy, 2 cards in hand. So let's see if we can work out what is in our opponent's hand based on what they flip here. So only one Narcomoeba is jumping out. Maybe they only have one Narcomoeba. That'd be very weird. So they have this Narcomoeba. They have a Dread Return. How many Spirit Guides they got left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I count that right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they almost certainly have an Elvish Spirit Guide in hand. So I think they have Narcomoeba and Elvish Spirit Guide maybe. So, how many Bridge from Belows do they have? Do they have any? Can't see any here. Sorry, we have to make a really calculated decision what we point our spell at. So, if we were to hit this right now, they can still sacrifice this to bring back Poxwalkers. So, how many Poxwalkers do we have? 1 Poxwalker, 2 Poxwalker, 3 Poxwalker. Okay, I think we let them have this. So targeting. So we are going to discard this. How many Dread Returns do they have? I think they have 2, right? So I think that's what we actually go after here. So that's 1 Dread Return, 2 Dread Returns. Can't see a third. We could just exile 2 Poxwalkers, but they still get 2 back, which allows them to do the Dread Return shenanigans. See what they name here. So they got the Jack-o'-lanterns. They can get the mana to do the Memory's Journey, which is the thing they have to do here. They named Endurance. Okay, we don't have one. Oh, there was another Dread Return. Did I miss the 3rd Dread Return? That'll do it, wouldn't it? Okay. I couldn't see it. Maybe I should make this bigger so I can see it better. Maybe we'll do that next time. I don't want to do anything differently here. I don't think so. So this gives us access to looking at the top X number of cards. I think we can do better than that. Yeah, I would describe that as better. Now, there are obviously some problems with a hand that looks like this. But this is such a weird polarizing matchup that what we do doesn't matter as much as what our opponent does. So we're just, how much Graveyard Hate do you have? It's a bit like in the olden days of Extended Dredge, where it's a case of, okay, do you have the Graveyard Hate? If you do, then you're fine. If you don't, then you lose. So choosing the right time to play Dredge in the olden days was pretty clutch. Right, Dread Return underneath that one. Simian Spirit Guide. Another Simian Spirit Guide. An Undercity Informer. Okay. They showed us they have a thing, so let's see how bad it is. They have 1 card in hand. So they have 3 Spirit Guides gone already. Let's pop this out and make this large, so I don't make the same mistake I did last time. Okay, so how many Spirit Guides do we have? That's the first thing to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they don't have any Spirit Guides left. Okay, so we go discard this. We will take out Narcomoeba and Thassa's Oracle. So they've both been exiled. What am I missing now? So this Narcomoeba won't come back. Put the graveyard there now. So our opponent dies in their upkeep. They get to Jack-o'-lantern. Where is their Jack-o'-lantern? Okay, we'll see if we draw a green source for this crop rotation first, in case that's what I want to do. Otherwise, we just get rid of the Jack-o'-lantern when our opponent doesn't have any mana. Oh, we did find the green source. Okay, Bayou. Crop rotate this one away. So then we'll crop rotate that one away. I suspect that's impossible for our opponent to beat through. Yes, this is just one of those decks where you either have the stuff or you don't, and what your game plan is almost certainly doesn't matter unless you're a turn 1 combo deck yourself, really. Okay, let's go to round 4. We're on the board. Okay, this is a turn 1 Marit Lage. I will keep this hand. Our opponent's name is Bazaar of Baghdadi, which is a great username. Let's see if their username holds to the sort of thing they're trying to do. Do they like busted graveyard stuff? Do they like busted graveyard stuff with counter magic or not? On the plus side, because we're on the draw, we do get to see what our opponent's doing to work out if what we're doing matters. If they play a Vexing Bauble here, we're in trouble. If they play a Mages of the Moon, okay, we're not in trouble there. Let's play this one out, and this one, and this one. So given the nature of our opponent's deck, I don't believe they're going to have any counter magic, stuff that messes with our lands outside of Blood Moon effects. Or they could play a Painter's Servant, but then we get to respond and make our 2020. So I'm not going to make the 2020 just now, so this way we can check what our opponent's doing a little bit if we need to. So they're almost certainly going to discard 2 cards. Right, they are Vexing Bauble and Blood Moon. I don't know if our opponent's on Prison or if they're on Painter. Sideboarding is different depending on which one of those they're on. Hopefully we get to see a little bit more. The City of Traitors makes me think they're more likely to be mono-red Prison because you have less City of Traitors and Painter builds now. You sort of have 0 to 2 maybe, whereas the mono-red decks are still playing on the full 4. So statistically they're more likely to be that. And the main deck Blood Moon is usually a giveaway, but I have seen main deck Blood Moons in Painter. Okay, so we've got a sideboard for this deck for sure. We do not really need Bojuka Bog. We do not need these Once Upon a Times for this particular one. So we get in our Boseiju here. We get in these Abrupt Decays. So we don't need these not with this world either. So we'll probably get back in 2 of our Once Upon a Times. That works. I can always just go and look up my matrix, but I think this looks right to me. Okay, how do we feel about this hand? We need to get to turn 2 to Blood Moon most effectively here. But if we get one turn, then we're okay. So, do we think we can dodge a turn 1 Blood Moon? That's what this hand is trying to decide. I think we probably can. And if they mulligan aggressively to find that Blood Moon, then their hand might be a bit weaker. Yeah, they mulligan to 5. And as soon as we find... so all 8 of our fast mana sources will give us green mana. Chromox. A Shadowskull Smashing, an Ancient Tombs is the Blood Moon. It's a Makes of the Moon. Okay, sure. That's fine. We can beat that eventually. Not necessarily like that. This one is harder for us to deal with in terms of the Boseijus, but we have double Abrupt Decay here. It's if they just stack multiple Blood Moons one after the other. That's when we get in trouble. Okay, there's 2 of them. But we have the ability to find ourselves a forest, and then the forest can find us the other things we need. So we go Exile Spirit Guide here. Sylvan Scrying. We get a basic forest. We play the forest. We get a basic swamp. And then we start blowing up their Maguses. And at some point we'll put a Dark Depths in play. We should beat this clock that our opponent's got going on over here. Is this a 3rd Blood Moon effect? Sundering Eruption. That is a bit of a doozy for us, isn't it? So what is the plan here? We'll float green. We're obviously crop rotating this. So this is going to find a source anyway. So I think we crop rotate away. This lets us find a basic. So we turn the Urborg into a swamp here. Do we turn it into a swamp? Or do we turn it into the Dark Depths? No, we turn it into Dark Depths because we're going to get the swamp off of the Sundering Eruption trigger. Lotus Petal. That is step 1 that we need to accomplish. We get to blow up one of these Maguses of the moon. And then we just need to draw one of our other 7 green sources. No, 6 green sources left. Get out here, Magus. So we're going to take 2 this turn. A crop rotation. That's not the one, is it? Got a few turns. So we've got 3 Lotus Petal, 3 Elvish Spirit Guide left. So 6 out of 45 isn't the best odds, but I'll take it. So they could have something like a Pyrogoyf here. That would do quite a lot of damage to us. The One Ring. Yeah, that's a different sort of problem. We have some Pithing Needles specifically for the One Ring. A Dark Depths, that's not the one we wanted. So we'll move it over. I think we're probably going to lose this one. We need our opponent to not have 2 Blood Moon effects that quickly, and then also the thing to blow up our basic. Broadside Bombardiers, that is lethal right now, so we can scoop that one up and be on the play this time, which is an enormous difference here. So we'll just go back in as we have it here. So the Pithing Needle can stop the Broadside Bombardiers if we need to be aware of our life total, and then it can also stop the One Ring if that's the thing we need to care about. We could bin off 1 Pithing Needle for this Once Upon a Time on the play though. Just speed us up a touch. I don't know if they're running Dead and Gone. This is a weird hand. We have some answers to stuff. We can also pick apart our opponent's hand a little bit. We do have access to the Dark Depths combo at some point. I think I will keep this one. Looks a little bit squiffy at first glance. I think we are Thoughtseizing on turn 1. There are numerous ways this can go wrong for us. So, what do they have here? Mountain, Shadowskull Smashing, and everything else costs a lot of mana. Honestly, don't care about the Depthcember at this point. We'll just take the mana that we can take from their hand. Just slow them down to a crawl. We can use their own Blood Moon against them if we get in that sort of situation. There is the Mountain. There is the Bauble. So that shuts down just the Lotus Petals, which is a real thing we have to consider. So what are we doing right now? I think we play out the Boseiju. So what's our opponent again? Pyrogoyf, Broadside Bombardiers, Blood Moon. I don't mind the Blood Moon. The Broadside Bombardiers is kind of awkward. I don't really like this One Ring. So we can crop rotate for the Swamp if our opponent plays a Blood Moon. We can also crop rotate for the Dark Depths. We just need one little piece here. Alright, they're in the cracking the Vexing Bauble stage of the game. They've got a Shadowskull Smashing tapped. Okay. A Verdant Catacombs. That is a pretty good draw for us. So this becomes a Swamp. This becomes a Dark Depths. And then we deploy your friend and mine, Vampire Hexmage. I'm not expecting sudden shock here, so I'm not going to peel off this Hexmage right now. Alright, our opponent's conceded and we've won. So, in my statistical breakdown of where I record my games with this deck, I think our win rate against mono red is about 70-ish% at the moment. I think a lot of people tunnel too hard into Blood Moon, when obviously we have to respect Blood Moon. So we're actually not that bad into it, because we just use it as a combo piece and change how we're sideboarding and approaching our opening hands. I think if you really want to beat this deck, just stick to doing your aggressive thing most of the time, and that could be alright. I think the Dead and Gone plan is better than the Blood Moon plan against us. I understand why you would keep the Blood Moons though, but it's a thing that is nice to have, but it shouldn't be what you're looking for in your hand, in my opinion. Anyway, let's go to... Oh, we're 4 rounds in, so we're 2 and 2, so we're going to see if we can put the positive on the board. So our opener for the final round doesn't really do anything, so we're going to mulligan it. A lot of lands in that one. Okay, this does some things for us. I think we can keep this one and get rid of this Bojuka Bog. So any land gives us a turn 4, which is a bit slow. Any piece of fast mana gives us a turn 3. So that's 8 draws that give us a turn 3. We've got some interference that we can run here. Soporific Springs, Ether Vial. Okay, so we can play this. I think our opponent might be on Merfolk. So we're going to name the Ether Vial with our Pithing Needle here. So if we play this Urborg out, we have a bunch of draws that allow us to make a turn 2 Dark Depths here. Are you going to Force of Will my Pithing Needle? This Pithing Needle shouldn't achieve much outside of slowing our opponent down, but I'm more than happy to slow my opponent down here. Right, we got a Hymn to Torak out of it. I'll take that. Our opponent may have Wastelands in their deck. Master of the Pearl Trident. Yep, we're on Fish. I played Fish a little while ago, actually, and they were better than I was expecting them to be. I still don't think they are where you want to be in Legacy. But that new guy felt pretty good. Oh, a Wasteland. He's going to hit us back. Or not. So we have to take things slower because of this Wasteland. Do we have to take things slow because of this Wasteland? I think we still do. Do you want to Bayou or a Forest? I think I just want a Forest here, don't I? Let's cast a Sylvan Scrying. Sure. Are you going to sacrifice your guy to hit my Sylvan Scrying that we don't actually need? Be my guest. They could put in another... Yeah, no, just doing that. That's fine. I was going to say they could put in another Merfolk once that's in play and then sack the other Merfolk for the Force Spike effect. But yeah, our opponent's an aggro deck. It's turn 3 and they haven't attacked us once yet. We have the combo available to us, but we have to get through this Wasteland. Okay, we don't have to get through the Wasteland anymore. Does this mean they have another Wasteland? No. A Thoughtseize. Okay, we don't get to leverage that just yet. Let's play out Thespian stage. Piece of fast mana gives us the combo next turn. They've shown us Soporific Spring, so they probably have more of those. They might be able to bounce our Marit Lage. We do have some interference with that. I don't know if I want to Boseiju this. I don't feel like where I want to be. I would like to cast a Once Upon a Time, I think. Because you don't want to play out Dark Depths until we can go with it. Interesting. Our opponent's going to see whatever we get here. So I think we just get this Verdant Catacombs. Play it out. Go and get ourselves a Swamp. And then we can have a little peek at what our opponent's doing. Right, they're going to put in some sort of Lord, most likely. They could put in a Hexcatcher. No, just a Master of the Pearl Trident. Floodpit's Drowner. Just do taps a creature, put a stun counter on it. We can protect against that, but it comes at a reasonable cost. Let me just take the Drowner here. Just assume that an uncounterable 20/20 is going to be enough. We don't have any islands, so that's somewhat of a blessing. We're not trying to cast any spells. I assume they're going to put in their Phantasmal Image and bash us for 3 this turn. Oh wait, no, this will come in as a copy of our Dark Depths, won't it? That is an interesting thing to consider. Okay, let's Pithing Needle here. This is probably worthy of a Force of Will. Let's see what they pitch. Oh wow, we're just in, are we? Ether Vial, please. I'll play the Dark Depths out. This is a touch risky, actually, because if our opponent has a Wasteland, they might be able to interfere with us. Cavern of Souls. What are you going to name? Merfolk. Sure. Yeah, the Phantasmal Image is an interesting one. Phantasmal Image. So they're going to make another Master of the Pearl Trident. And I suspect we're getting bashed for 3. Next time we get bashed for 6. And then we kill them. We are in the territory where Soporific Springs might be a card that does something against us, though. I don't think we're trying to blow up anything with our Boseiju just yet. Elvish Spirit Guide. Does that change anything? It does mean that we have access to this Boseiju as well, because once we have a Dark Depths in play, that is a legendary creature. I don't think our opponent's going to have bounce spells. I think I'd rather play around the Wasteland, so in their upkeep I'm going to make the 20/20. We can't blow up our own lands with Boseiju, so if they turn something into an island, we can't stop it being an island. Just going to be another little guy. A Floodpit Drowner. Pretty good. So we have to hope that our Not of This World works here, I think. Do they have a blue card to go with this Force of Will? It's very likely they do, because what would they not have played out? Another Aether Vial, I guess. But if they have any blue card, there it is. True Name and Nemesis. Okay. Not ideal for us, truth be told. So we take 6 this turn, and then we take 10 next turn. So we are dead next turn. We can deploy a blocker. Does that make a difference here? No. Because we block this, and we take 6. Are we going to get killed by Merfolk? Been a while since that's happened. Yeah, that Floodpit's Drown off the top was pretty good. They should just attack with everything here. It's pretty much free. Yeah. So we're just going to take lethal damage and die. Alright, little Merfolk, you did a reasonable job there. A touch awkward, I won't lie. So what are we looking for in a matchup like this? I think some Abrupt Decays are probably worthwhile. The Not of This World might be okay as well. Same with like Sylvan Safekeeper has some use. Boseiju certainly has some use. I don't really like the Duress. Our opponent's got all the creatures in the world. We do not require a Bojuka Bog. We might require some... We definitely need the Pithing Needles to name things like Wasteland here. Sejiri Steppe is going to be useful. Boring in this sort of stuff, we probably don't want the Once Upon a Times. So they probably go. Our Discardler is pretty good. It punctures through counter spells. So what does this currently look like? 4 cards we get to add in. So I think 4 Abrupt Decay seem pretty reasonable here. Just add those in. Use our Hand Disruption and Decays to keep their board under wraps. Because they spent a lot of resources stopping us doing stuff. And if we can just snipe out what's left, that's fine. This is a turn 1 2020 with backup. Sure, why not? It's a bit Force of Will checky. But we could also just draw an Urborg and go again on turn 2 as well. Petal. There's a pause here. I think our opponent's got something over there. Another Petal. Let's cast a Hexmage. How do you feel about this one? Is this Force of Willable? You can give up a third of your hand? They are. Okay, they pitched Sink into Stupor. I don't really want to play out my Dark Depths here into potential Wasteland, so we're just going to pass. This does mean that we don't get to the Urborg draw, but our opponent is affected on a multi 4 now. Urborg, please? I did ask nicely, but sure, I'll take this one. Let's play Pithing Needle. Get that Wasteland out of here. So we can crop rotate for an Urborg. That's pretty reasonable. A Cavern of Souls. We don't care about their creatures being uncounterable. Is this going to be some sort of Lord, perhaps? Silvergill Adept. Okay. Revealing a Floodpit's Drowner. The Drowner's good. The Drowner is good. There is an Urborg. That is an interesting proposition here. I don't think we play out the Hexmage. We can play it around soft permission next turn. I don't believe our opponent's going to have Dazes in their deck, though. There's no reason for us to play it out straight away. Yes, we might get to block a tiny bit of damage. Alright, so there is a Wasteland there. That's fine. A Ghost Quarter. We'll play this out now. So we can play around any soft permission our opponent may have. Do you have a second Force of Will over there? Okay, we get a creature. Our opponent can't Wasteland us where we have this Pithing Needle. Just going to be... Surely not a Drowner. It's going to be... Hexcatcher. Sure. Can't be countered. Fair enough. We can pay the 1 to protect ourselves from this and force our opponent to block some stuff, to sack some stuff. They can't attack into our Hex... it's not our Hexproof, our Hexmage because of its first strike. This mana does not cast Sink into Stupor. Let's get busy with this. They're going to let us go to main phase. So here's the Floodpit's Drowner. So I'm going to try and tap this. I'm going to try and not World this. They can sack their guys. They have to sack all of them if they want to stop us from casting this. Now, they could have another Force of Will. If they do, fair play to them. Can't feel bad about letting Fish win. Like, it's not a deck that you particularly want to lose to. But full respect to someone still playing it in this day and age. There is a Force of Will. The old Lord of Atlantis. Okay, so on their turn, they can shuffle in this Marit Lage if they want to. Okay, now they can't do that. Let's just get rid of that so it doesn't get that chance. You're not the only one who can do uncounterable spells, opponents. So we get bashed for 4. Then we get bashed for another 4, and then we hopefully kill our opponents. But they could have some Lords, which could change the math a little bit. No Lords. Okay, so just 4 this turn. Means they don't have a Lord to play at all, because you definitely play that pre-combat. Phantasmal Image? It is the image. Okay. That is a 2020 of their very own. Well, well, well. Fair enough, my friend. I can't moan about getting killed by Marit Lage. The perfect way to end, the perfect way to end the first Turbodepths video, or the first Depthcember video, dueling Marit Lages. Yeah, that was pretty funny. I can't say I've played against a lot of Merfolk. So yeah, unfortunately we finished with a 2-3, which is not a great record at all. A bit of a miserable start to the Depthcember. But let's talk about the deck. So I think our deck is, I play this quite often, and, sometimes it doesn't work out, sometimes it does. The consistency level of this deck is pretty high, but obviously what your opponent does has a pretty significant impact. We have some pretty horrible matchups. I don't think the Nadu matchup is very good. Basically, a lot of the green-white decks tend to be pretty hard for us to beat, whether that's green-white depths or whatever. But there's not that many of them around now. Nadu's kind of the main one. Unfortunately, we ran into it today, but that's going to happen sometimes. Whatever deck you play, you need to play the matchup lottery a little bit. We are a little bit more matchup dependent than some decks that can have flatter matchup spreads. But that does give us some really easy matchups. Like you saw, we could crunch through the red deck pretty well. We got pretty unlucky against the Painter deck, I think. They had to have a very specific set of draws to beat what we had. And they had it. Obviously, the cards are in their deck. That's going to happen sometimes. But on average, the Painter matchup on my notes is about 62, 63%, something like that. So it's quite favourable. But yeah, love this deck. This isn't the last you've seen of it for Depthcember. We're going to play the other build of... So there's basically two main builds of Turbodepths. You have the Once Upon a Time build, and you have the build that cuts through 3 Once Upon a Time in favour of 1 Not of This World and 2 Duress. So you have more disruption for your opponent, but you have less ability to go and find other bits, to find that extra bit of mana you need, or that extra Urborg to try and make you go a bit faster, or the Hexmage to go into that plan. So you kind of lose that bit. We did draw Once Upon a Time a little bit too much after the fact. Obviously, if it's in your opening hand, it's great. But, a card this good, it's going to have a downside. Having it on turn 1 is obviously phenomenal, and usually our deck revolves around what a turn 1 hand looks like. But yeah, if you know me, you know I absolutely adore this deck, and if you're interested in this deck, I do have a very detailed breakdown of this deck on my Patreon. So it's over 50 pages, it's like 55 pages or something, and every month I do a new meta breakdown of how it impacts our deck, how we should be tweaking, has a sideboarding matrix, we have discussions of both this build and the build I just mentioned. There's even talk of the Rainbow Depths on there, all the card choices, everything. So if this is your sort of jam, by all means check it out. It's a relatively budget deck as well, and you can play builds without Bayou if you want to. But yeah, big fan of this deck. Didn't quite come to fruition today, but maybe we can have a better run with it later on in the month. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the spicy Depthcember action. We're going to get a whole lot spicier than just playing Turbodepths. Don't you worry. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.
If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget Turbodepths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbodepths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.